Yo, what's going on, guys? Chris Bond here, Overtime Athletes. Want to make a new series for you guys. I get a lot of questions about how to coach certain movements, or when I'm working with particular athletes and more for performance side of things, how I cue particular movements. So what I want to do is I want to do a series, we'll call it Coast or something of that nature, where I literally just walk through some of the standard movements or some of my favorite, and I'll rotate these through speed, power, strength, auxiliaries, core movements, things of that nature. Drop a comment below what you guys want to see I coach on, and I'll just go a little bit more in depth on each movement so you guys can begin to see how I actually coach it. So you out there, when you're performing the lift, even if you pull one cue from it that can support you in something you may have not been doing, then I feel like this video is a success, where I can add value to your workouts, make you better as an athlete. So what we're gonna start with today is gonna be one of my all-time favorite compound movements as far as the lower body goes. I use this movement. This is one of the benchmarks I use for absolute strength. Absolutely love this movement. It's trap bar deadlift, right? You guys call it hex bar. But essentially the biggest thing with this is it's a great movement to, I think it's less compromising than loading with a really heavy squat, and it's same thing as a conventional deadlift, because I feel like the spine is a little bit more exposed when you're doing those movements. Here you're a little bit more over your center, so it's a little bit easier, and when the back starts to tilt, I have the guys cut it. So what we'll do is we'll actually go through the full movement. So Jake's gonna display it here. The way I teach my athletes is I want them to step inside the bar. What I tell them is I want their feet right underneath their hips, toes forward. A lot of guys, when they step in, they'll get a little bit wide, so what you'll see is the knees will actually cave in, either due to a weakness from that the internal rotation of the femur because the glute's not strong enough, or it's just simply because they're too wide and they can't clear their arms here. So I want them right underneath their hips, right where they're center and producing power when they actually go to produce a jump. The other thing is I want their even, so their ankle bone's gonna be even right in the middle of the bar. So if you see this grip, you dissect it in half, that's exactly where I want your ankle. So that's feet set up. Next, what I wanna do is I usually teach from a top-down perspective. So I'll tell the athlete, especially if they're very regressed, I'll tell them to start immediately tall as you possibly can, torso tall, shoulders pinned back. And then what I want you to do is straighten out your arms, and I want you to just squat your butt down and reach for the bar right in the middle of it. Good. So now in this position, what you're gonna see is his hands are dead center on the grip. They're right over his ankle bones, and he's got a good displacement here. What I mean by that is his shoulders actually aren't over his knees. Now, Jake's a little bit shorter. Some taller athletes, the shoulders might come over the knees slightly, but you don't want to be too much. In fact, it's not so much a bend pattern as it is a squat pattern because you're pushing up. So what I like to do is initially what I want to teach you is I want to draw the hips down and pull the chest up, okay? I like to tell the guys to keep their upper back tight. What that means is go ahead and go down. Good. Now, pull your shoulder blades apart, not together, apart, so it makes it look like a rounded back at the top, rounded back at the top. So most guys, when they go to lift, they'll have a bent elbow and they'll be a little bit rounded here. So I like to say tight upper back, pull your shoulder blades together. Good. Big chest and straighten out your arms. Now from this position, I like to tell my athletes, imagine you have a string from the top of your head connected to the ceiling. You want that string to go up and down. So you're not lifting the weight, you're driving the weight away from the ground. So if you think one cue, it's to drive your feet into the ground and drive the weight away from the ground, pushing or driving straight up, as opposed to lifting the weight where you're actually in that hip hinge pattern. So go ahead and go down, boom. Everything tight, don't jerk the weight off the ground. Everything's tight, drive through, good. Come back down, good, tuck your chin just a little bit. Perfect, drive through, perfect. Give me 3 more. Perfect. And each time, another thing, when you guys are decelerating down, I tell the guys, be mindful when you start getting up a weight, you're gonna wanna come down fast eccentrically and bounce the weight. But what I see is a lot of athletes go ahead and come down eccentrically fast and actually pretend as if you're a little bit off balance. If there's anything off balance with the hips and you come down fast, you'll notice that it doesn't hit exactly. Now you're hitting unevenly, and what happens is that compromises the spine. So you never want to do that. So come down under control. You can even reset if you want to. Sometimes I let the guys loose if they feel good, and then they can get a little bit of momentum off the ground. But for the most part, we want to reset after every single rep. So just to reiterate, like I mentioned to you guys, big thing is when you're bouncing it, I suggest going against that, especially when you get heavier weight. Other thing, like I mentioned too, the big mistake you want to avoid is hips up in the initial pattern. So go hips up from the side. Come check this out from the side. So you don't want to go hips up with a rounded upper back. You want to draw your hips down. Good, pull your back, shoulder blades back together. Now he's more in straight line pattern, straight up and down as opposed to a hip hinge. Last thing is you don't want to be lax. You want to radiate tension, like I said, so that when you're not jerking it off the ground. So show them what that looks like. It's good. So you're loose and then you drive off the ground and try to tighten up. In that case, sometimes when the weight is too heavy, you're gonna compromise yourself as well. So make sure you irradiate that tension, squeeze the bar. Everything's locked in from your hips up, and all that moves is that lower body pushing up. Other than that, that's pretty much it. What I like to use this movement for, just so you guys know, if I'm doing an adaptation phase, I like to go 4 sets of 8 for maybe a week or 2. If I gotta teach an athlete this, I might slide some blocks underneath, just depending on their size and length and how bad their actual posture is. But I can use this for any athlete ages 15 to, I still use it with my pro guys. When I get into strength, I like a simple progressive overload. Your 5x4s, your 3s the next week, your 2s. I rarely go one movement. With this, I like to go a technical 2. What I mean by that is we want to go 2 solid reps with good technique and form. 1 every now and then I'll touch depending on the athlete, but more or less that's just to let them know where they're at. Other than that, that's it. Check it out. Use this for performance. Like I said, it's an amazing drill. I use this as a benchmark. I love to go double body weight on this, or like to build guys up to double body weight to 2.5 times body weight. And that's one of the absolute strength movements that I absolutely love to use. And now I'm using it where I don't rotate it as much with other movements. I kind of stick to this as the core. So if you're an athlete, add this into your workout. I'll catch you guys next time.